You are listening to the Firecracker Podcast with Tony Rico.
All right, well, we've got our dear, great friend, Mr. Derek Allister, and Ms. Joanne was here quickly, briefly.
She fled.
She was almost like your attorney, came in, walked you into the room, and then she quickly disappeared. But, it was great for that. We got to see her real quickly. I'll say hi to her and catch up with her in a little bit. But welcome back to the studio,
Thank you.
Derek.
Thanks.
Appreciate
Great
you being
to be
back in
here.
here. And I really appreciate, you're always so humble when you say, hey, if you got any time, I'd really like to do a podcast.
Oh,
but
man.
The door is open always for you, sir. And
Well, be careful what you...
that's okay. That's
what
all right.
you offer
I
there.
get myself in trouble
Because I
all
like
the time.
to talk.
Yeah, that's okay. I get myself in trouble all the time. Yesterday we were at lunch with Doug Myers and Don Menard, and Doug had kind of shared some personal business of one of the coaches at the table, and then he looked at the coach and he said, "You should not have ever told me that." Which means if you tell me that, I'm just going to tell everybody anyway. So,
I got it.
anyways, welcome back, and
Thanks.
we're in the middle of a kind of a great, interesting fall that we're going to get to a little bit. But I always like to try to catch us up with people and kind of either reintroduce or make sure that people understand why we're doing this, what our relationship really is, where it comes from. So, the first thing I'd like to ask you is just, now we've got OnDeck softball and OnDeck measurements.
Yes. Yeah.
One and the same, different?
No,
One's-
very different.
Yeah.
Very different.
Everything started with OnDeck softball.
The genesis is the same, but now they're very different.
Mm-hmm.
Everything started with OnDeck softball, which was based on my basketball recruiting models, from my history as being a basketball coach.
And the way that you took notes as you evaluated players, or was it an actual service within basketball?
Oh, that's interesting you say that. Yeah, because there's no question when I evaluate players, there's a basketball influence. I get told all the time by Joanne and Heather and everybody, you look for certain types. And that's probably true.
Sure.
Because basketball has a different look than football or wrestling or whatever. So
to me, what's always been amazing is the size of the basketball players and the agility and dexterity that they have to perform every type of move athletically that there is. And given their size, it's amazing. So how would you describe what you look for, how it compares to basketball background?
I think that long linear look, I think that has something to do with athleticism. That being said, maybe the greatest athletes in the athletic world are those offensive, defensive linemen in football. When you combine weight and strength and speed and explosion, those people are
and they continue to get bigger, faster, and stronger.
Yes, yeah.
And most of it legally now, but that's crazy how it continues to. Remember the first 300-pound lineman? Was it Ogden or something like that?
But he was like a freak.
That was a long time ago.
Yeah. And now that's what they look like. And they almost look normal.
Yeah.
Because they're so well proportioned. Yeah. But
till I stand next to one of them.
Yeah. It's when I was coaching in college, we'd run into the football guys and they're massive. We coach tall guys.
Yeah.
But then you run into those football offensive linemen, and as you get closer, they just get bigger. It's like coming up to a house.
Right.
You look at it from a distance, it looks okay. And then as you get closer, it's like, whoa.
And then when you see the level of athleticism that translates to NCAA, and then that level of athleticism that translates to the NFL or the NBA, and now even, baseball wasn't always known as you had to be super athletic and you could play it, get away with things back in the day. But now even that's a very athletic. There's some great specimens. So that model coming over from, the way that you evaluated players fit nicely, because I always believe that in softball we need models to come in to show us how to do things.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's true in any sport. You talk about baseball. When you look at Trout and, those guys judge, those are big dudes.
Right.
It used to be baseball players were like smaller, not smaller, shorter.
Could look like your average Joe walking down the street,
your regular guy, yeah.
Right.
And now there are these guys that could play basketball or whatever, that are pretty long and strong, and
see more athletes today that seem to enter sports almost with the business mindset. I compare to, kids playing a sport from they're 4 or 5 years old and really loving what they're doing, and then it all manifesting maybe to a professional level. But I think today you have more athletes that maybe didn't love the sport that they're in the profession of right now. They just were playing it. They're very good. Maybe they have some genetics and things just, who's not going to spot a 6'4", specimen that can run a 4-something 40 or this or that. But there seems to be more business athletes today than ever before.
Yeah, well, wasn't Todd Marinovich, wasn't he one of the first that was developed by his dad?
Yeah, there you go.
Right here out of Orange County, I think.
And that has to go hand in hand with knowing that you have an ability to provide for your family for a long time.
Right.
So that's how everything kind of escalated. When you look back at the salaries of the baseball players back in the 70s, and I know everything's relative, but I think of one time I saw a post on like the Cincinnati Reds, the Big Red Machine from the mid 70s, and the salaries of those players, which we could probably look it up, but by today's standard, you'd say, wow.
Right.
The wonder Pete Rose is signing autographs for a little cash on the side and stuff. So.
Yeah. And they used to go get jobs in the off season.
Yeah.
Back in the day.
Yeah, that was it.
When you think about that, that's crazy.
So I don't know. I don't have a strong opinion about this, but I think, boy, for what all of those players did for this great sport, I'd just like to know, and I know they have pension plans and things like that, but I'd like to know that their place is secured in the sport, because where would we be without it? Nowadays with the obstruction and things like that, we wouldn't have Pete Rose. Right. What would have happened to those plays at home plate?
That's really true.
Yeah. And it seems like right now that the field or the base runners sliding right into the base, no longer coming out. Remember when I think it was Reggie Jackson in the 76 or 77 series against the Dodgers, and he was on first base, and it was a double play ball, and he just hung out by first base. He didn't run to second base, and he stayed and he waited for the ball to be thrown.
Yep.
Remember? And it hit him in the arm.
Yep.
Yeah. And
that's right.
Did you happen to see any of the game last night, the Dodger game?
We watched a little of it, but
went pretty late.
Yeah, and I'm getting older. I don't stay up quite as long as I used to.
Their pitcher, Hill, laid down one of the few bunts that you see nowadays. Came from the pitcher, but he's so competitive. He was running inside the baseline, and as the ball was coming by him going to the first baseman, he kind of waved his hand like he was trying to swat the ball down. Something you would do in kickball, or something you would do like out on the playground or something like that.
Wow.
Little different sense of competitiveness.
Now there's one thing about that. Joanne is a huge San Francisco Giant fan. So it's tough to get those Dodgers on the Allister.
Yeah, I understand.
Television.
But you did come in with a nice shade of, I know it's OnDeck blue, but I'm going to call it Dodger blue today. Because
I'll give that to you.
Last night was, if anyone's on, I know a lot of people watching, but it was so torturous last night because, they were striking out. Milwaukee, their pitching was just ridiculously good. And the announcers kept pointing that out. And I haven't seen so many swings and misses in a long time. And so it was not a very satisfying process. It was kind of like, wow. And you naturally are kind of waiting for the end to be bad. And then they, just like the beautiful game of baseball and softball, turned it on. Runner on first, wild pitch. And that's where you say, give me a tweener, give me a bleeder, give me a lousy single. And actually Bellinger hit it pretty hard through the gap. And then the bang, bang play at home. And kind of reminds me of the softball College World Series. Some of those games are so exciting. And it's like, Derek, we couldn't script them any better.
Right.
Really couldn't. So let's get back a little bit to OnDeck. Do you guys have a mission statement when you created this, you and Joanne? What was really what was your really purpose though? You wanted to relay the information you had. How did it develop into the business?
It grew into a business. When we started, we were just out to have fun.
Yeah.
I had been the basketball coach. Joanna coached softball. We were both living at Lake Tahoe then, and went back to teaching high school. And I'd always said, hey, we should take some of these basketball ideas and put them in softball. As we were watching Heather and Jessica get recruited. And so we just did it on a lark. I think we had 5 coaches that we worked with initially.
And those were just people you had relationships with, and you would just talk the game? It wasn't that you were pitching your business?
We'd go out and watch because we enjoyed watching. So we'd drive down to Southern California and watch games. And then on the way back, I'd write up a report and we'd send it to those 5 coaches. And they paid us like $50 a year.
Well, and that was very minimal because, again, the noble approach with a lot of us, the beginning is because we all do it for the right reasons, contrary to maybe some popular belief nowadays, but really are doing things for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
And so just offering that information. But the relationship part of this, there's something I heard on a TED Talk, and it makes a lot of sense, but people don't buy what you do, they buy why you do it. And so if you even look at recruiting businesses, people will come to me and, hey, I've got this recruiting service, I've got this great, something that's valuable. And there's a lot of good things with it. And I try to inform them that, you're entering a very saturated market. Everybody, and I get it. There's a lot of people here and there's a lot of people that need the services. But ultimately, wouldn't you advise to build a relationship with either coaches, with
Absolutely.
the people of the industry, right?
That's what life's all about, the relationships, And I think the people that get in trouble are the ones who are looking for the quick buck, because it doesn't happen quickly. Coming back to ODM, we split that off a number of years ago. We started it, I think, 8 years ago, maybe going on 9. Mm-hmm. And again, it was just to answer a need, and we just put money into it, not expecting any return, and then it started picking up steam. But still, it just kind of went along, and it got bigger and bigger, those numbers in the college world. And then within the last 18 months, whoo, baby. Yeah. I mean, it has blown up huge.
And why would you say? Because of the recognition of testing, the need, the increased value? I mean, why would you say it's continued to pick up speed?
Well, like everything, I think once people realize the significance of it, then it becomes valuable. So the college coaches recognized that they could understand a little bit more about the players that they had and that they were recruiting by knowing these numbers.
That's important to ask the question, well, why? Why should we test? Like we have the camp this weekend, right? And understanding the cost efficiency and fighting for the dollar. And so why do we need to pay for this? Why do we? And I always want people to understand things. Excuse me, because we only want to provide things that are of value. But that is the question: is that it does increase your players'
Absolutely.
value.
Well, I think on 2 levels. Last weekend when we were out at Rosetta Canyon, I had 2 World Series head coaches say on that first day, Derek, when are we going to get those numbers? And so tremendous value to the college coach. Mm-hmm. But for the player and the parent, it provides those numbers to the college coach, but it also gives them a baseline.
Sure.
We have averages for junior high school, 9th, 10th, 11th grade averages. We have college averages for D1, D2, D3. So I think if you're a parent and a young lady, you look at those averages, you look at your scores, and you say, wow, I'm really good at this, or wow, I'm a long ways away from this level. And so then, hey, how do we fix that? How do we get better? That's what it's all about.
And that value is important because of everyone in the market trying to be recruited. So even though the structure has changed, thankfully, but you're still trying to create a competitive edge. So anything and everything that you can do. So on our end of it, we still want to advise and guide people and help them reduce their cost overall, but be efficient to where they are plugging in, because often it's not the glamour of something that's really expensive that might be plugged into this big, vast network, but it's really the reliability that you have. And again, I'll go back to the relationships and the credibility that you've developed in the industry. And again, that started with just talking with people.
Yes.
Not selling players.
No, not at all.
Not pushing information, but having conversations. And then people, and again, I want coaches to really understand this, because, if our coaches walk up right away to a college coach and right away the first thing is, introduce and then stick a profile in their face, you're kind of disconnecting a little bit, and I always encourage them to thank them for being there, let them know where all your information is. If they need anything, they know where to get it.
Absolutely.
As opposed to the hard sell, because in the end, that creates that little bit of tension. And I think people could really benefit by understanding this approach that you've taken. We've tried to take it not only with our players and people in the organization, but with our competitors, people we compete with on the field, which we'll talk about here in a little bit. But in the end, it's deeper and it's more effective. What are you testing? So what exactly are the tests that?
So we have sprint testing, the 10, 20, and 40. We have a 5, 10, 5 shuttle, which comes out of the football world. But it's very, very good for softball. We have all the bat metrics from Blast. We use Blast, which is, I think, the best unit going these days.
And what do you like about Blast? Why would you say that? Is it?
I think the numbers are very, very consistent. I think they're real. Anytime you get into all that technology,
A lot of metrics, right?
Yeah, you always kind of wonder,
Right.
whether it's right. And I realize they've tested thousands and thousands of people, and certainly smarter people than I
Right.
put that all together.
Right.
But you always wonder,
Right.
But the results come back very consistent, and they kind of match up with the eye test where we look at it and go, yeah, that sounds right.
Yeah.
And
It's kind of like pieces of the pie. Instead of the whole pie as the whole player, you're kind of creating pieces so you can see test scores. We have the TAP test, the behavioral stuff, the psychological area. And so it gives a more detailed picture of that player.
Of the player,
Right.
without question.
Right.
Because again, we're not eliminating people.
Right.
There are shortstops who have huge arms. There are shortstops who have, lesser arms, but ultra quick releases. There are third basemen that bang at 280. There are great defensive third basemen.
Sure.
There's all sorts of players. So we're not eliminating people by that. We're just showing them what their strengths
Highlighting
are.
different strengths.
And then showing where their weaknesses
Which
are.
allows a college coach to say, look, I've already got this. I need this,
Exactly.
Because in the end, it's a complement of everything, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
And you bring up the TAP test, which is that mental assessment. Again, it's something that if a coach knows what the young lady, what the player is all about, what makes her tick, then it's easier to work with that. Work with that person.
That's really an inside look to the player. Now, that's taking a look. And again, with all of the projects and all the great things that we have rolling out, that's still something that we have to get behind and push out. I know I've got it connected with our coaches. Rob has been amazing. Rob Pike, the founder, and he's just been amazing to work with.
Yeah.
He assimilates and he customizes things for us. We've got a tab on our website for it. But that's another area that these players can gain advantage. And again, I want our parents and families that are listening to this to understand that there's a cost of doing business in softball. It shouldn't mean that you need to refinance your house to cover everything. And so, where do we advise to spend their money? If you don't spend it, I tell our coaches sometimes you can sit in the window at Starbucks and use the internet and people can see you there. But have you really experienced Starbucks? And for maybe for some people, that's what it is. It's like our certain organizations, or attending certain camps. But are you really investing in what that is there for? Because there are certain services and products that, if you invest, you're going to increase your value. And that's what I believe our families and people need, because where do they get sound advice? Keeping up with the softball Joneses can put you on the wrong side of things really fast.
Oh man. Yeah. I mean, if you don't choose wisely, but I think there's so much value in quality things. We had the event this last weekend and we had almost 100 coaches, I think, come through there.
It was the Southern California Organizational Challenge.
Yes.
I'm never good with titles and things.
Yeah, I'm not good at that.
The first time that we brought it down here, and what your idea was, your vision was to, and you had done this already in Northern California?
Yeah, well, something similar to it, but not to this extent. We didn't have the competition, and I thought that tournament on Sunday was super.
Yeah. Well, tell me what your vision was, and because this was a great weekend, it really turned out great.
So anyway, I think when you link yourself to quality, so even though we had 100 coaches or whatever, I think any kid that said, hey, they were in that, perks up the ears of the college coach, I remember doing something with you several years ago where we came out and tested at one of your events. And you made an interesting comment. You said, by being, and this was 5 years ago, by being in this, you're getting yourself ready to perform in front of the masses when that time comes. Sure. And so I think all the things you do, providing you can afford it as a family, you don't want to mortgage the house or anything, but I think all those things come together at some point. And prove productive, providing you're doing it with quality people, quality organization.
Sure, right. I think that's where it starts. You start something smaller, the core of the right people,
right?
Let it build the right way, and take it from there.
You know, it's like in school. You want to run around with the successful people.
Right. You are what you do hang around with.
Yeah,
right?
exactly.
Hopefully you want to hang around with the successful people, right?
Heck yeah. I mean, look, I married somebody really successful, and now I'm doing okay.
Look at that. Yeah, sure.
I mean, where would I be?
Right. And that's smart of you to put that out there, but totally understandable. And that's compatibility too, right?
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. When I was coaching basketball, part of our early talk to the new kids, who came into our program was, hey, number one, get to know your professor and hang out with them. Mm-hmm. Number two, get to know the smartest people in the class and hang out with them because they're going to drive your performance up.
There you go.
Don't hang out in the back of the room with the guys who aren't really there to be students.
I unfortunately had a little bit of that back of the room classroom, but I will tell you, on the ball field, I always wanted to play catch with the guy that threw hardest.
Right.
I always wanted to hit with the guy that hit the best. I'm as far as the game goes, I'm a collection of things I've just stolen my whole life from everybody and anybody in the game. It's how we learn, right?
I think that's how you get successful.
And the great thing is that I think in this game, it'll never stop. You're always going to be able to learn something.
Right.
Quick point on to the testing. We had a NorCal player down this weekend and heard a lot of good things about her. First chance I got to really see her on the field and did really well. Behavior was great. Her hitting was great. Tremendous hands. She had a ball in the 5-6 hole. She was playing shortstop. She kind of sidearmed it a little bit, and could have been a stronger throw to first base. Excuse me. So we're just talking with a couple people there and watching, and the question came up about, does she have the arm strength? So I pulled her aside in between innings and I said, hey, do you feel like you can, in that 5-6 hole, kind of come over the top a little bit more? And if I ask you to pop that glove at first base, do you think you can do it? And she looks at me and she goes, yes. Like, how dare you ask me that?
That's what you were talking about.
Okay. And so
this is funny.
So I had the first baseman the next inning during the warm-up throws roll her 3 balls in a row, and I had her back behind the third baseman. Right. And still a little bit from the side, but she popped the glove. So going back and talking skills and just mentioning that to a coach that was there, and then, so I said, yeah, I think it's there. And then you walked up and you gave that kid the medal for having the second strongest arm in the whole camp.
Yeah.
And so
she threw it 66 miles an hour.
Yeah. And we had a follow-up discussion and said, here's the affirmation. And so there, even though I was able to create a warm-up drill that we could see something, what if not? And she had those scores, and that was very good information for her to have available.
I tell you, there's so much you can learn from that. We see kids that are a little slow out of the block, in that 10-yard time, but then their second split, that 20 is quick. So it's like, hey, can we get like one step quicker?
Sure.
Then we see young kids that can't sustain their speed in that 40. And really the 40 is only home to second to home. And we tell the kids that coaches want you to be fast in that 40 because they want to score on one hit.
Right.
If you have to put 2 hits together to score somebody from second, the game's pretty hard.
Sure.
So we can tell if kids are strong enough to sustain their speed, and then the exit speed obviously is how hard that ball is coming off the bat.
And what would you say with the exit speed for every 10 hitters? How many are spiking high? And I would imagine most of it's kind of like pitching. Most of them are in the certain miles per hour, a certain exit speed range. And then you got a couple that spike a little bit higher.
It really depends upon the type of hitter. Mm-hmm. When we divided them up for our averages, we kind of separated the hitters into the bombers, Lauren Chamberlain, Shelby Penley, those kids. Mm-hmm. The hitters for average, the Jessica Mendoza types, and then the slappers. And you get different exit speeds, and different combinations of bat speed and exit speed. So Lauren Chamberlain, I think, swung it right around, when we tested her, right around 74, 76. Mm-hmm. And her exit speed was right around 78. Mm-hmm. I mean, that ball's coming off that bat.
And what would you say is the college average? That you dare.
Is that me?
That's
I'm
all right.
Sorry.
Could be the president. Could be Joanne. So you answer that.
That is bad.
That's okay.
Okay. The college average for
Exit speed or
a bomber? Mm-hmm. Okay, I can tell you that. The college average for a bomber is 72 miles an hour.
okay.
Of the kids we've tested.
Yeah.
The slapper is down in the 60s.
I would say for the slapper who wants to create value for herself, it's your full swing, right? So that's what you're testing is their full swing, right?
Yes.
You're not testing their slap speed.
Yeah.
So the importance of just being able to, so many of them get self-conscious because they learn slapping a little bit late, and then the swinging away is a little bit more difficult. I tell them, swing as hard as you can for effect. Swing as hard as you can. If you miss the ball, stand there and look at him like you're lucky I missed that. I said there aren't too many coaches that will call up or that will keep their left fielder in on the dirt or their third baseman in your face.
That's funny.
I said, and if you accidentally hit it, even better. But don't worry about hitting it, and then you've slowed your bat down. And so to just swing the bat hard. And gosh, I'll go back to we didn't have anything growing up. So want to know the best way you're swinging the bat hard? Listen for it. Like, tell yourself you're going to listen for your bat. Every time I tell a kid that, and she swings it the first time, and you hear maybe this little, and I said, okay, now make that a little louder, and the second one will come in just a little more. And I said, you have to kind of think about that. And Phil, I said, we didn't have anything telling us, if you could hear somebody swing the bat, and you're a catcher, and you heard somebody's bat speed,
right?
That was a heck of a hitter. But
that's really funny because you think about that with golf. KJ, my son's a golfer, and when he swings the club, there's a whoosh.
Yes.
When I swing it, there's a psst.
I used to love breaking a branch off a tree. Anything that was long and skinny would create that little sound always. And
that's
so
funny.
Obviously when you're going towards a bigger bat, but some of the old tricks of the trade from yesteryear. Yeah. But anyways, the exit speeds, all the tests are proven value. So you've got in the pocket what you need. And
we've tested a lot of college players, and I think these are two great average little tidbits. Mm-hmm. The average middle infielders and center fielders at the elite level, the Pac-12, SEC, Big Ten, Big 12, ACC level, they run that shuttle in 4.85 or faster.
4.85.
Yep. We have not tested a middle infielder or center fielder who runs that shuttle slower than 4.85.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Very good.
And while a young player, might run it a little slower than that, a lot of that depends upon her lower body strength, and that all obviously gets better as they mature and get to that level.
Would you say 14s or 16s where it starts to, you find out where they're not 16s. Yeah. Particularly in that test. And they'll get even faster. I think a kid who goes to college running a 5.0 or a 4.9 or something is going to be down around 4.8, 4.7. Right.
As they gain that strength.
Right. Which pretty much always happens in college.
Yeah, but if you're running that shuttle in 5.3, and playing shortstop, you might be moving to a corner.
Slide it on over. Right.
And that's fine.
Right.
Because
what that is it's allowing it to go where it goes. Look at how many players at 16s and 18s, when I ask them, how many of you were shortstops at 10 and under rec? And they all raise their hand. And how many of you were pitchers? And most of them raise their hand. Yeah. You just end up going where you need to be.
Where you need to be. That's right. Yeah. And then the arm strength. The average D1 woman throws at 62, 63 miles an hour.
Wow.
And so we can look at that a couple ways. Our girl from NorCal throwing 66. I'll certify that kid as having a big arm.
And she was about 5'5".
Yeah, she wasn't that big.
Not very tall.
Yeah,
not very tall. And what would you say the average high schooler throwing velocity?
I can tell you exactly is 58.
58.
Yep. Now that's interesting you bring that up because while we've tested high school kids, we still tested elite high school kids.
Right.
So I think if you went over to Ocean View High School and just talked to somebody who wasn't a travel ball player. Yeah, they'd probably throw it smaller.
So it's higher end, right?
Yeah, so 58 represents, a solid travel ball.
You use that as a standard or just almost a goal or as an indicator and just kind of a general indicator. Just gives you kind of something to shoot for.
Absolutely. And then you take the girl who's thrown at 52. Well, let's look at that 52. Are her mechanics bad? If her mechanics are bad, then let's get to somebody and get that fixed.
Yeah.
If she's just young and small and, not strong yet, kind of weak,
Right.
but her mechanics are good, well, she's going to grow up and it's going to get better over time. But if you're throwing at 52,
Yeah.
and you know that the high school average is 58, and when you get to college, you got to be up in those 60s.
Yeah.
Let's get to work on that.
Sure. And there are programs out there. There are things that people can find. We're working on an educational model for our players to, how do I develop these things? How you're talking earlier about the 40, and for a player to understand your energy systems, you have that short-term burst that you're sprinting for, anywhere 5 to 10 seconds. You start getting past 30 seconds or 20 seconds, there are different types of energies. And so, kind of understand how you train a little bit. I think that's important. The testing, Derek, I think is again, it's one piece of the pie, but it's becoming more and more. It's like, look how we see the strike zone now in baseball games. We've always known the strike zone. Then they used to put the box up after the home runs. Yeah. Now the box up it's up the whole game. The whole game. I'd like to be an umpire.
Yeah, I know it.
I mean, it's up while you're making that call.
Do those guys go back and watch the game, you think?
How do they not? And how could they be comfortable knowing that? My gosh, Chuck, I've been doing this 33 years, and I'm that human component of half a ball off. And I mean, it's just part of the dynamic.
But isn't that amazing how those hitters know when the ball's an inch?
I think that's something that's interesting is watching a hitter like Justin Turner for the Dodgers is one of the few players that he puts his back foot right on the line. Like, most hitters will give themselves that little space, and he puts it right on the line and he hovers over that outside corner and he almost looks down on that ball as it's going. And you can see, he can almost see how it's a half a ball off the corner, and he'll just look at that umpire. Every now and then he'll miss it, but I think that's huge in knowing the strike zone is.
I saw one guy in the Red Sox game because we did get to see that. And the blue called a pitch a strike that was just outside. Just off the plate. And the guy didn't say much. The hitter didn't say much, but he just kind of looked at him and he said a little something. Yeah. And you knew he was right, But that just amazes me that they have such a great eye.
Yeah. And the scrutiny nowadays is just crazy. Talking about the game being more detailed and indicators and numbers and times and speeds, the pitchers. You get them out there and we line them up, and I think, it's like we've got another event coming up this weekend, and I think, okay, you put radars on pitchers, and 95% of them are going to fall into, so you correct me on this one, I'm going to say are going to fall into 57 to maybe 60.
Yeah.
I mean, that's just where they're at. And I want them to understand that their value doesn't come from this perpetual goal of hitting 63. Right. At some point you have to know what you are. But what if we were able to show, when we're showing these pitchers out there in the camp, show the speed of their first pitch, which might be 59, and then the next pitch at 53, and then the next pitch at 46, because that is more accessible to the masses of pitchers that are not throwing as hard as they think, and they really feel a lack of value. Because they're always, am I throwing hard enough? That obsession with throwing hard enough. And in reality, this is not a cover-up. In reality, disrupting timing for the matter, hitting your spots and locations and disrupting timing is the key for any pitcher to be successful. And okay, if you fall into the 1 or 2 or 4% of that somebody's doing something at a higher level, great. There's your College World Series pitchers for the most part, but we're talking about the whole sport, Derek. We're talking about all of these young kids that enjoy playing the sport. And if you only feel value when you're in the 5 percentile, we got to change something out. So that's just, I want some people to think about that as well, because I think the pocket radars are pretty accessible now, and I encourage our pitchers, okay, work on your speed, but master changing speeds.
Yeah, it's really funny you bring that up, because at our West Coast Elite Camp a number of years ago, we had the great LSU pitcher, Allie Walljasper. Mm-hmm. And everybody used to criticize Allie because she was a pretty big kid, and but she only threw it 59. And then as she got good, she was up around 62, 63. Yeah. But we were at Mount Sac, and she was pitching in the game. and in our camp, and I put the gun on her. And I tell you, Tony, she threw 10 pitches, and there wasn't one pitch that was the same speed. It was 59, 52, 56.
I think that's huge, Derek.
61,
Huge.
46. And it kept jumping around. And it was just an eye-opener for me.
How about that message to the good-sized pitcher that, everyone's expecting to throw 65, 66, and she doesn't. And so she feels even more displaced because there's an expectation. Pressure. So let me throw this on top of that with the Allie Waljasper experience is that kid with Haley Woods calling her pitches shut us out, I believe, which really didn't happen very often. And she shut us out in third round of winners bracket at nationals a few years ago, and they moved on. And all I could tell her afterwards was, that was amazing. I had a front row seat, and you beat our team, and that stung a little bit. But to watch the game that she threw, and you know what? We had trouble being on time with her, and she was hitting her spots. And I think that's another area again that is head nodded, understood, but in reality, practice very, very little. Very, very, very little. So, so I guess that conversation for me is really people understanding the importance of accuracy and being able to change speeds. And because again, that pitchers, you go out there and you know your games, that's great. But how do we provide data for pitchers that can give value to the masses? I feel like right now with that, it's almost like the 2.6 lefty or the 2.7 lefty, and so many of them will put that on their profiles. But having something that's standardized and knowing there's really not my experience, and then again, you're getting these numbers, but down the line, a 2.7 lefty is 15 out of 100.
Rarely see that.
15. Yeah.
Yeah, we rarely see numbers like that.
Now on profiles, you're going to see them on 85 out of 100. Yeah. But I think that's more information that people should, that we need to provide for people so they can understand basically how to make sure you're timing them the right way. Right. Let's talk a little bit about this last weekend again. So organizational challenge. Mm-hmm. Brought in a few of pretty strong brands, pretty strong names, coming in. I mean,
I think when you look at it, a few days later, you go, woo, that was a good group.
Yeah. And then asking those organizations to put some teams together, which, for us, our experience is that we were able to do something different. I mean, it was a great experience for our kids, our coaches, kids playing with other kids from other teams, coaches coaching with other coaches from other teams, myself getting a little more interaction with people that I talk with generally a lot, but it was really, really, really beneficial for our organizations. And we're pretty happy with it. I mean, we started with some pool play, and we got around some rain on Saturday.
Yeah, I mean, I was ecstatic. I mean, number one, just because it was unfortunate everybody else was rained out. Yeah. And for some reason, the rains held off at Rosetta Park.
That was crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I thought the energy was tremendous. I thought it was great to see the different organizations with their different coaches, working with these kids, and some kids who were familiar to them, other kids who were unfamiliar. Sure. But in a high level competition. Sure. I thought the workout went great. The Fungo guys did a great job. Yeah. That defensive field was humming.
Kept it moving, right?
I don't think it could have gone any better. And,
do you find that some college coaches found out they had a better time than they thought they were going to have? Because a lot of them hadn't been to that venue before.
Yeah, they didn't know. Yeah. They didn't know. There were a couple who kind of knew what we were doing, but we don't promote that all that much. And but the ones who were there were like, "Wow, this is really good." And one of the great coaches in this country came up halfway through Saturday and said, "Derek, never change this."
Nice.
So I think it's just going to get better and better. In the years ahead.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun, Derek.
Yeah.
And was it Breakers and Monarchs in the final, or
Breakers and Monarchs, two of the older teams?
Yeah.
They brought a little bit older squad, and
which is good. Our puppies got an education from Brant Bordeaux and Breakers. He's an unsung hero to me in softball because I feel like he's unappreciated. let me take that back. Unrecognized, because
Unrecognized,
he's
yeah.
a guy that doesn't market himself. He doesn't push himself out there. But I tell people, you see this guy out there with that white beard. Let me just tell you something. You watch everything he does. He's one of the smartest guys in softball.
Yeah.
He really is. And he does a great job coaching. And he had that, got the best out of that drop ball pitcher. You might know her name, but best out of her. And our young little 8th grade puppies got a little education from Brant.
Yeah, but your young kids did a good job.
They were fun. Yeah.
I tell you, they got deeper than I thought they would.
Yeah, they were fun. You know what they had is kind of what you would expect. I guess the term is a lot of them were kind of full of piss and vinegar. They were very, very feisty, very fiery. Right. Didn't back down from the moments, but at times didn't know what to do with the moment.
Right.
And they were kind of attacking it with fire. But that's, to me, that's what you want to see. Right. When you're watching,
Absolutely.
Some of the younger.
I mean, you had some good players out there.
Yeah, it was fun, Derek.
There were.
It was fun.
Yeah. Oh, you had some real good kids.
And we're not, our major push with this organization isn't to extract the best players, put them on the best team, and win a championship as a priority. Yes, we're competitive, and yes, we compete for championships, but we are a culture-based organization. So you had mentioned the energy at this event, and I describe it as this event on its first time around had a culture already. There was a feeling, there was a vibe, and it wasn't an accident. There was a certain approach by, those that created the event, and I want to say a lot of us that came in our relationship. So I think together, because anytime you do something for the first time, even if the weather's great, there's problems, but it's all, to me, how you handle those problems, how you mention those problems. I mean, I can't give enough credit to the Triple Crown staff, Jeff, Doyle, the UIC with umpire, the crew at Rosetta Canyon.
Ooh, Eric.
They were amazing.
They were amazing.
They were truly amazing. I mean, you just don't see that type of commitment. The calmness from Jeff, to me, was critical to the success of this event, because he would just walk up and, rather than us see his stress for everything that was going chaotic, because that's just what they do. They put out fires. But I thought that was seamless. And
that grounds crew was out there at 4:30 in the morning.
Yeah.
Eric was out there, lights were on, and he was working on that first field.
Yeah.
So we could get it rolling.
We're going to set him up with some Firecracker gear this weekend. So this weekend we've got an exclusive event, or a first time event. It's the Batbuster Firecracker deal. And we've got the camp in the morning with OnDeck Measurements as a station in that camp. And then we're going to be following with a couple of games for each team, First time event, there's going to be a learning curve. There's going to be some things that we're going to love, some things obviously we're going to learn from, but I'm really, really excited about that. And what I was thinking of is we met with Eric probably a couple of weeks ago and asked him, what time we could get out there. And he said, you let us know. I mean, he's willing to meet us as early as we need. And you just,
what time are you going to
just don't hear that. Natalie, who's going to set up the event, she's probably going to get out there at 5:30, and then I think I'm going to hit 6:00 just to make sure, get everything kind of pre-set up, have most of the staff in by 6:37, and then we got the hour of registration. So
I think ODM's going to be there right around 6 to start setting up. Yeah, because we roll at 8, right?
We roll at 8. And you're going to do, while the kids are warming up, you're going to do your quick talk to the parents and kind of give them a little deal. So we're really excited about that coming up this week. And this gave us 2 weeks of kind of some outside of the box events.
Yeah, I tell you, again, I don't like to drop names, so I just don't. But one of the great coaches in the Pac-12 said she is so excited for this weekend.
Yes, because
she'll get to see a lot of Batbusters and Firecrackers.
Yeah,
and when you go to regular events, you kind of chase the Batbusters and Firecrackers, and to have them all in one venue over the course of 48 hours, that excites the college coach.
Right. Well, and that's as you attended one of our get-togethers and kind of the starting points of this vision, and that it really is. It's a non-agenda, to the industry. That's not the purpose. It's really to take our experience and the success of our organizations and then combine them, for the success of our organizations.
Absolutely.
If it branches out to the softball community, great, but it's really about just facilitating the needs of our people and working with people that we have good relationship with and providing something that's just a little different. I think that's important. I think it's important to participate in a lot of things that are out there. It's not about that, but it was a breath of fresh air last week.
Yeah.
Wasn't it?
It was. I mean, we had a blast.
Yeah.
And we had never really done that before. And
I could see that on the faces of some of the college coaches.
Yeah.
They were watching with a different type of not intent, but they were watching with a different type of behavior.
Right.
And so,
there were 208 uncommitted kids out there running around. And they got to see him work out a little, but then they got to see him play competitively.
yes.
And that trophy was beautiful that Travis got.
Awesome.
Travis Kotzemeyer. And, the Monarchs get to take it home, and then they
Good
have
for
to bring
him.
it back next
Do they?
year. Yeah.
They get their name inscribed in it or something? Or
And
just,
he's going to put all the kids' names on there.
That is great.
And
that was Coach Jeff coaching that team, or were there Blanco? Yeah. Good for
Jeff
him.
Blanco, yeah.
That's big for the organization.
Absolutely. They did a good job. And like I said, they're a little older.
Yeah.
But that's cool.
That's okay.
And
They're uncommitted. They had the needs. Right?
And I'm sure some of those other organizations are going to come back with pretty stellar groups next year.
Well, yeah, I think some that maybe are pretty competitive and maybe didn't finish, and maybe that wasn't their priority. But I think everybody learned.
Right.
Definitely second time around, it'll be
great.
Yeah, everyone's going to shore it up a little.
Back to Brent Batto. That guy's always got players down there with the Breakers.
He's always good.
It's
for years
really
upon
amazing.
years upon years.
I never really said anything when you brought him up, but he's one of the great gentlemen in this game.
He's a guy that you don't realize, he's looking at you and competitively he's cutting your artery here, he's cutting your artery there, yes. He's doing this, and you don't, if you're not careful, you don't realize he's basically getting your team to do just what he wants. And you have to really watch everything he does, because I tell our players it's one thing to know how the car works when you're driving, but it's more important to know what the other drivers are doing. That's what tends to keep you alive, and that's really the insight that I try to give our players as well. This week, what we're going to do, a little different format, is the camp's going to go from 8:00 in the morning till around noon. And we're going to mix all the Batbuster and Firecracker players together.
Wow.
And they're all going to run through all camps. So we're not going to divide it into a Firecracker camp for Firecracker players and Batbuster camp over here. This was per request of a couple of college coaches too. Why don't you put them all together?
Right.
And I love the influence of, because there's ethical ground that Mike and I stand on, which means, you can pass a Firecracker through Batbusterville and Batbuster through Firecrackerville, and you're not going to get the slimy coach going, hey, so you're happy over there, or here's what I can do for you, or we're in this or that. That's, I think, one of the most exciting parts of this relationship is the respect and the ethics that we agree on.
Right.
And so I'm excited to have our players in their hands. And so they're going to run through 5 stations of Batbusters, Firecrackers, and OnDeck Measurements, and then
yeah, I think it's a great moment for softball. Too often we're a little bit fractured in the sport, and that's not necessary, because it's all good people in the sport. I mean, believe me,
and all well-intended people.
Yeah,
and let's say, let's say there might be some practices that, and for whatever reasons, it's another conversation of why certain sports, and whether it's money involved or different things, and politics and ethics and things. But I tell our people, especially parents and coaches, we can point the finger at each other, and we can blame each other, and we can badmouth each other, and a lot of that's been done over and over and over. Or we can look at the fact that with all the people that make mistakes, I can tell you, and I'm trying to think, maybe 1 or 2 people that were malicious or had, maybe a criminal mindset, but 99 point something percent you're dealing with people that are just make mistakes. So, are they stealing money, or do they mismanage money? Those are 2 different things. Right? Does he not care about kids, or did he slip and use profanity at the wrong time? So, to lump them all in with the murderers and I think that we have to understand. And then on the parents' end of it, I don't think parents mean to apply undue pressure on their kids. Very quick to judge the coaches and the people that their kids are in their hands. But I believe that when you're talking about finances in front of your kids, you don't know. I mentioned this. I said, you don't know if your daughter is going to be okay with hearing that you can't afford the camp that she needs to go to.
Right.
One kid's going to be okay, just understands that's what we go through. Another one will feel like, I'm causing this on my parents. Right. And in today's age of kind of emotional wellness priorities and different things like that, I said, if we as parents and coaches can realize that if we work together, and when something breaks, rather than point the finger at each other, let's help each other and let's build it so we leave something behind, so that the next set of parents, the next generation come up and they have something to step into, instead of more arrows, hatchets, tomahawks, and scalps laying all over the place.
Absolutely. The parents are wonderful. At every single one of our tryouts, because we have these tryouts to get into our events, I talk to the parents and I say, hey, 99% of parents are great, 1% are crazy.
Yeah.
And they all laugh, and probably a few more are crazy than 1%. But
I think they just need direction.
yeah.
Because without direction, what would we do? We don't know what to do. So sometimes it gets crazy. Sometimes it's judgmental, but
the bottom line is they love their daughter.
Yeah.
And you have to respect that. And,
absolutely.
And I think it's okay to put your arm around a crazy parent and say, hey, you're crazy.
Well, empathy goes a long way.
Yeah, let's change up here a little and figure this out so it works.
But I think when you've had that finger pointed at you and told this, that's an obvious approach. I think when an experienced dad can come by and give him a pat on the back and go, hey, I can remember almost every time that happened to me. Hey.
Right.
You okay? Like you don't need to just listen. You don't need it. That calm voice of just, you kind of turn back, and I can remember some key points in my life of someone just coming up and going, hey.
Absolutely.
Asking me if everything's okay, and then me yelling, yeah, and then realizing, no, everything wasn't okay. And I need we all need our checks and balances.
Yeah, absolutely.
You married yours.
Right? Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, she's pretty good with that too.
Derek, this time just flies by, and we're going on an hour of this already. But I want to make sure that we covered everything. We covered our events, a little bit of the history, our relationship. I mean, goes back quite a few years, and which is again, building relationships and understanding why people do what they do, and collaborating, connecting. I really encourage people to network. Find people that you're compatible with. Don't take the obvious approach across the field and every organization's the bad guy, or, every parent's or every coach is the bad person, but just take a different approach and build relationships, because last weekend was an example. Everything you do in your business is an example of the strength of the relationship. Thanks. I tell people it gives you a bottom layer. And then when this competitive layer on top fills in the space, you have something that's much deeper.
Right. Absolutely.
And I just can't encourage people enough about that. So,
but I want to bring something up now that you just brought to mind. In one of the key games last weekend, somebody is playing Brashear's team, Sean's team. And it was a close game. I think the bases were juiced or something. And somebody hit a rocket down to third, and the third baseman made an outstanding play and doubled off the runner on first. And Sean, applauded the play, and wow, that's pretty
cool. Caught your eye.
Oh, it absolutely caught my eye. And I don't know the exact circumstances, but I stood up there thinking, wow, that's pretty cool. That Sean applauded that great play, even though it cost him the win, probably.
And I don't care who it is, but the fact that it's our vice president, that just warms my heart for our industry, because that's an example of that behavior.
Yeah, I also think that that's a hallmark of Firecracker softball.
Well, for anyone that's aware of Sean's success and what's happening with him, and we work very hard to empower him and give him the platform that he's earned, but it's not an accident. It's not we say, F yourself, just put it on and carry yourself a certain way and create. And he has invested into everything that we believe, holds true. In this office a lot of times is it's like a mental operating room when I get families in here and players in here, and their experience is broken. They to some degree is broken. I reassure them at the beginning of the meeting in here that all I'm going to do before I even hear their story, I guarantee all I'm going to do is I'm going to wash the crud off them. I'm going to listen to what they've went through in softball. I'm going to take my hose and wash it all off. Right. There's going to be this beautiful young woman that has played this game 6, 8, 10, 12 years. Right. She's not connected to her experience. She's not connected to her mastery. She keeps waiting for things to go wrong and wanting to correct herself. If we have something, I could say this even for you, if we have something that people see as wow, whether it's the relationships or respect or the success with the business, and then they ask, well, what goes into it? And so right behind you on your right shoulder, can you turn? And you don't need to actually read it, but you see that yellow piece of paper? Yeah. That is a recipe for a happy household that my mom wrote for my niece when she bought her first house. And my mom lived to see her 90th year, or 91st year, but died at 90. And last Christmas, our niece gave us copies of that for Christmas. And so I tell people, I said, do you want a good team? You want to run a good organization? You want to have a good relationship? You want a good household? Read that recipe. And it's like the secrets of being a successful coach. It's not glamorous. Right. It's not, technological. It's not like, all the bells and whistles. It's,
Right.
I think it says something like 2 cups of patience, 4 cups of love,
Right.
mix with this and you'll have a happy household. And
Right.
ultimately, Derek, that's still the core basis from happiness, right?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And I think, coaching basketball, that's a little rougher. You coach guys, and guys are a little edgy and all that. The young women, they're incredible athletes. They're selfless athletes. They have a sense of team that escapes many, many young men.
Very good point.
And so when you talk about hosing off the residue and all, I agree with that. I think most young women in this game are in the game for things that are very noble, that as a society, we would applaud.
They all started for the right reasons.
Absolutely.
I tell them all right away. I said, I apologize to you. And they look at me and I said, and not for anybody personally, but I apologize for all of us who are well-intended that weren't certified or trained to provide experiences that you can continue to enjoy. So the fact that the depression rate is as high as it is in D1 softball players now, I think it was 30%, the anxiety levels that are so high, the suicide rates that are so much higher. And so when we look at it, I said, it's almost like we took you to the playground and you started playing on the slides, and then we started telling you how to slide faster, and we started telling you how to swing higher, and then we started getting upset when you didn't get a turn, and we started getting upset when you didn't slide fast enough, and we changed the playground for you. And now here you are in the playground that you originally went because you loved and you'd be at the park, and now you're sitting there and you're waiting to be yelled at, or you're waiting for this self-criticism, as you said. The way the young female's mind works, there's an attachment to, I don't want to disappoint people for so many of them. My dad, the team, the worst fear is striking out, letting people down. I mean, it's the worst fear for every player, but men are just different, to our oldest day, we still think we have a nice looking shot, or we can still swing the bat. But I think that's important for people to understand, because I'm often empathizing with our dads and saying, look, when you learn to talk to her the way you do with your wife about maybe a dinner that didn't come out perfect, but you're not going to say anything, or she bought a dress that maybe you're not going to say anything. And then somehow in softball, it's like, let her have it. Let her know what we think of the shot, or this or that.
But that's usually because they love them and they want them.
Oh, absolutely.
It's best for them.
Absolutely. Again, that's one of those bridges in here. If I ask a young lady, what's your greatest source of stress in softball? And I was kind of surprised when this was happening at first, but she would go right here. She'd go, him.
Yeah.
And just point her at him. And to the dad, it's just like, oh, right here. Yep. And I said, okay, wait a minute. She didn't mean it like that. She just answered my question. So like when you tell her, you're dropping your shoulder and what were you doing? We worked on that. You didn't mean it.
Right.
But she took it like that of her hitting. I said, like I said, if you tear down her dinner that she cooked last night, she's going to take it as she doesn't cook good. So I said, just use that. All I did was create a little balance. So the next time in that car ride home, understand the approach, because I guarantee you, you can tell me I don't have a good swing. I'm going to tell you you're a knucklehead. You don't know anything about a swing. But tell me I'm not a good dad. And then the fear of knowing what we aren't as parents, or where we fall short. Oh, that hits a guy right where it hurts.
Oh, man, I'll never forget. We had just moved out to Texas, where I had gotten a job at Stephen F. Austin. And our youngest daughter was a catcher. And I was a little crazy. And I can picture it right now, Tony. But there was a play at the plate, and it didn't go her way or whatever. And I went a little sideways, yelling and kind of acting stupid. We got in the car, and our daughter said, it was kind of quiet. And she goes, Dad, I don't ever want to see you do that again. Oh, my. Talking about that dagger.
Yeah.
I spent the rest of her career of travel ball in high school watching from left field. Yeah. Just because I didn't want that anxiety and that tension, because I couldn't handle it, obviously.
Sure.
And I obviously wanted to respect her decision.
And she was able to say something. A lot of them can't. Yeah. And I think, Derek, that's part of what I want people to hear as well, too. That's part of your story. part of my story. You kidding me? Anybody that grew up with me, and not that there'd be anybody in elementary school that listens to this, but we just go, well, let me tell you about Tony Rico in elementary school. He'd punch you in the arm if you didn't kick the ball hard enough, or so that's all part of our story that goes into it, which I think is why we relate to people that when they're still learning.
Yeah.
Hey, we're going to finish up with some kind of fun questions to kind of get you to know you a little bit. These are really easy. All right. Okay. So just kind of roll with me on this one. I could pick out some easy ones for you. All right. So on a scale from 1 to 10, how strict were your parents?
8.
An 8. Both mom and dad?
Dad was probably 9. Mom might have been a 7.
Mine a 7. Still pretty high.
They were pretty strict.
Pretty high standards.
Yeah. We couldn't get away with much.
Yeah. All right.
And they knew where we were.
And did that stay with you, or did you? It's just kind of, you always kept your own kind of borders and boundaries.
My dad passed away in 2009, and my mom's still alive at 92. But I still think she would reprimand me if I did something that she didn't approve of.
Yeah, I'd say definitely with my behavior. What was your favorite toy growing up? I know I'm taking you back a couple decades.
My basketball.
Your basketball.
Absolutely. I went down to the park all the time by myself.
So there was a park you went in and had a hoop, because some of us just shot on the side of our garage or hit the
we had
finger.
that too. We had a dirt court in the back.
Yeah.
And we had a dirt court in the back with a 10-foot hoop, and we had another hoop on the back porch, like on the slab, that was only, probably 6 or 8.
Which you enjoyed growing up, though, right?
Absolutely. Then I thought I was Pete Maravich, so that's a blast from the past.
There you go.
So I'd go down to the schoolyard and throw behind the back passes and to try to hit the pole on the fence. So
was that your favorite player?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Pistol Pete was
Pistol
my guy.
Pete. Yep, I remember. I'm there. I'm there with you. Here's one to think about. Well, the question is, if you could only eat 2 foods for the rest of your life, what would they be?
Oh, man.
So go into your favorite foods. It's
Like-
your
like
birthday, and you get to
dishes
choose
or
any.
foods?
Yeah, and not what your doctor says you can and can't have. Let's forget that, because I'm at an age now where that's limited.
Yeah. So dishes or
Yeah.
foods?
What are your weaknesses? Either. What pops in your head first?
Well, I was a Dr. Pepper fanatic for years. And then 4 years ago, I gave up soda. Whew, man.
How you doing?
I'm doing well. But now it's like I don't want to break the streak.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with, so
Sure.
I'm kind of irritated with myself for that.
Okay, but commendable.
But
And how about a food?
I tell you, from down in the south, there's a dish, crawfish etouffee. Oh man,
What's the etouffee? What's that?
It's a sauce with a roux, and it's kind of a smoky thing with crawfish. They use crawfish for bait out here. They eat it.
It's a delicacy there.
It's a delicacy down south.
Yeah. So is that something you find when you head into the south?
Oh man, I look for it.
Yeah.
I look for it, and I eat a lot of it.
Is there a particular place?
Papado's, which is a chain restaurant down there, and I'm not big on chain restaurants.
Sure,
but
sure.
Their crawfish etouffee.
Right.
Ooh,
Excellent. There you go. That's what we wanted to hear. If you had to live in a different state, where would it be?
As I get older, Arizona.
There you go.
Just because I want to get a little warmer.
The weather. Well, you're still up in Lake Tahoe.
We're up at Lake Tahoe. It gets cold.
Does that mean you're shoveling?
We have the big snow blower, but we have to shovel some.
Sure.
We had 14 feet in our front yard.
Sure.
14 feet of snow in our front yard 2 years ago.
Wow. We're hoping our December 1st event in Florida is going to be going to get some of our Northeast and some of our colder weather Firecracker teams down there and spend a little time in Florida in December.
Arizona's green grass and flowers in February are pretty sweet.
Yes, and their sunsets are the best.
And their sunsets
they're absolutely amazing. Yeah. Derek, what's your favorite time of the day?
I'm kind of into that evening.
When things are done?
Yeah, I have great memories of the sun setting and, being on the golf course or being out and about and kind of that, as the day is kind of winded down.
Yeah.
Moment.
Nice.
So.
I like it. What food could you never bring yourself to eat? So the opposite end of that spectrum. Something you wouldn't try if I put in front of you.
Oh man, if you haven't seen me, I don't eat. I eat pretty much everything.
Do you? So nothing. You're not.
No, I couldn't eat like tongue. or something like
Good
that.
for you. All right.
Yeah,
So you're not
couldn't do
that. All right.
Yeah.
Okay, we got a couple more here. What are your pet peeves? Any pet peeves? I'm sure you do.
Oh man.
When people
Yeah, I think when people are inconsiderate of others, you know, and it doesn't matter who that is. I remember stopping a father one time who was whacking his little son. You know, this was up at Lake Tahoe, and they came out of a store, and he was just whacking on that kid. And I just stepped in and said, "Hey, man, you know, we can't be doing that."
Yeah.
And so, you know, I think you have to be considerate to people.
Yeah.
And you know, there have been times when I haven't been, obviously.
Sure.
We all are.
Well,
but,
we're all human, but as far as the things that, you know, for me, I'd say that's the one thing that, especially for my mother, is I'm more likely to not conduct myself very well if I see someone not treating someone else very nice, you know.
And I think people need to feel secure and safe.
Yeah.
And when I was teaching, and even when I was coaching, I had no tolerance for those who maybe tried to dominate
Or bullied
others,
or right.
Yeah, create situations where they intimidated others.
Yeah.
That bothered me.
Yeah.
So
But I think that's how our community works, though, in creating balance, right? When a certain type of person sees something, and we, you know, I think that's another way that I've described kind of what we're doing to the Batbusters is just we're looking to help create balance for our organizations to things, because things can get a little bit skewed. So, what's the best piece of advice you've ever received? Would you say it could be a coach, your parents? Could have been from your daughter.
Okay, so the one from my daughter was pretty good advice from a 10-year-old. Mm-hmm. There was a book by Earl Red Blake, I think, he was a general at West Point. Mm-hmm. And I read the book because it was part of a thing I was writing about Bobby Knight, and I was studying, you know, philosophy and all that. Mm-hmm. And there was a line in that I really believe in. Evidently, when Earl Red Blake, I think it was Blake, was a plebe at West Point, one of the big generals came and took over West Point because it was in a little bit of disarray. Like the student paper was publishing stuff that was critical of the Army, and you know, it was a little rowdy.
Right.
And so this general came in, and the first thing he did was he abolished the paper. And what the guy said in his book was what he learned from that was, quote unquote, precipitous action, whether right or wrong, always establishes command. And I've never forgot that. I think I read that and learned that.
It's the first time I've heard that one.
Yeah, back in the 80s. Mm-hmm. You know, so that line has stuck with me for probably 40 years, 35 years. And that's just that decisiveness that you just, you know, if there's something you want to do, you just got to go for it.
So I think that's it's a good way to transition to the last thing I'm going to ask you. And that is, so we could take that statement and advise our coaches that are coaching these teams, because some of them are on this end of that, a little too much, some of them are on that end of it. But ultimately, you're a decision maker. You're a manager of people.
Yes. And make the decision and then go with it. And if you screw it up, then admit it.
Own it.
Yeah, own it and change, and, you know, don't stick with it, obviously. But, own it, admit to it, and make yourself better.
Because when your people in your operation see that you are of sound mind or you're a sound decision maker, they don't question nearly as much.
Right.
But they will pick up on you immediately if you're strong-arming them or if you're not very decisive.
Right.
And softball people are proactive. So if you're not decisive, they're going to kick in your cockpit door. Absolutely. They're going to fly your plane.
And I think there's a lot of ways to get things done. out there in the world. I think so much depends upon people's personality and, all those sorts of things. So I think there are avenues out there, but I think it's important you pick an avenue and you go for it.
Yeah.
And see what happens.
And find out what works for you.
Yep.
Right?
Yep, absolutely.
It was great. At the end of the event, I think I was walking to my car close to it. I saw Joanne on the walkway on the way out, and she had a big smile, and she felt, it just seemed like she was so happy with the event, last week. And the fact that you experienced this together, so you're compatible, but you have this business, and it's just, from my end of it, Derek, it is just beautiful to watch. I mean, I watched my parents, were married 51 years before my dad passed, but that's something that I in my business, I talk to people a lot about, I wish there were more compatibility courses for our kids and even a course in decision making. If I went through my own curriculum, it'd probably be decision making and then compatibility and, definitely financial decision making. They're just different things like that. But, it's been really, really great to watch and be friends with both of you. And, obviously so proud to see everything that you're doing and we as an industry are kind of growing together because it's fun to see people next to you.
Right. There's a couple things. Joanne stays in the background. I don't mind getting out there and talking and doing things like this, and she tends to stay in the background. So,
but Derek and Joanne in our culture go together. It's not like
absolutely.
Who's Joanne. I don't think anybody's
nobody says that.
Yeah, nobody says that.
Nobody says that. But it's nice to see you recognize that.
Yeah.
And then there's a couple people, only a couple, and I mean a couple, who recognized what Joanne and I were trying to do years and years ago, and embraced it, and probably embraced it not because of the product, because there was no product,
because
probably because of the people,
right?
And that was Tony Rico. OnDeck would not be OnDeck without Tony Rico.
Yeah.
Well, and the Firecrackers.
I appreciate that. Yeah. And all that was, Derek, was supporting good people.
Right.
Whatever came of the business, if OnDeck would have fell on its face, there would have been no difference in our relationship other than there, less of a business, connection with it. But it really is. I guess we'll end the podcast with that ultimate message to people is build relationships, be good people. Now, with all the glitz and glamour of what you think you're chasing, right? So trying to win a championship for coaches in our position or trying to get your kid recruited and the worry and the stress that goes with camps. Are they watching? Did anybody like us? There weren't enough coaches on the, pull back. You're in good hands. Yep. There's a reason why OnDeck has the credibility that it has. There's a reason why certain organizations have the reputation and the sustainability that they have. You're in good hands. Our job is to continue to get better for you as families and for our families and continue to learn and lead them the right way and guide them. I'm in a different position, but I love the responsibility of it. And I'm extremely proud to be part of this industry with you and so many other good people. And so after this weekend's event, any downtime, you're probably heading somewhere right away, aren't you?
Oh, yeah. We're up to Northern California and then out to Vegas.
That's right.
For our elite camp, which is going to be fabulous. That lineup of kids. Oh, man, really, really good. And then out to Chicago and Arizona.
Yep. And then a little downtime for Christmas.
Yeah. Yeah, that's convention, of course.
Yeah,
in Chicago, but
then it slows down a little bit after that.
Yeah, we love Christmas. The Allister family loves Christmas.
Yeah, good. How do you not? Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Derek, thank you. Thanks for coming in. Always a pleasure.
Thanks for everything.
And looking forward to a great weekend this weekend.
Okay, thank you.
All right. Thanks for listening, everybody.
Thank you.